Okay, who were the Wide Awakes? So when you think of the Wide Awakes, you should think of a proto-brand army, or essentially just a uniformed youth club that would march at night with torches. There's some things that echo in more recent history, I feel like, with that. If you know, you know. And they would use crisp iconography. They drilled like they were a militia. And basically they turned a messy election into a mass movement spectacle. So they weren't like a meme, but they were a very serious, like, logistic, ritual, and optic-focused group. And they helped carry Abraham Lincoln into the White House. Their origin story starts in Hartford, Connecticut, after an anti-slavery speech by Kentucky abolitionist Cassius M. Clay in late February 1860. A handful of local shop clerks organized a torch-lit escort to keep order and signal resolve. So oil dripped from the torches. They wore shiny oilcloth capes and glazed caps. Practical first, iconic second. Within days, they named themselves the Wide Awakes, and within weeks, the format spread. When Lincoln visited Hartford in March, a Wide Awake company escorted him, branding locked to candidate, and that's how they became associated with Lincoln. Their uniform was a short black oilcloth cape, a stiff glazed cap, sometimes white trousers. They would keep gear on them like torches, lanterns, banners with a single vigilant eye. The uniform wasn't just about the iconic look, but it actually protected clothes from the oil and made the companies instantly legible at night. Aesthetically, it read as disciplined, modern, and slightly martial, exactly the vibe for a rising party promising order against the expansion of slavery. The clubs would drill and march like companies with captains and ranks, but they remained civilian. They escorted Republican speakers, staged parades, ran voter registration drives, and acted as political police to keep rallies orderly. Their membership skewed young, but did have teenagers as well as people into their 30s, and they reveled in being a generational counterweight to the old men in politics. Again, there's a lot of echoes, I feel like, in more recent events. By the mid-campaign, Wide Awake companies existed in virtually every northern county, with huge torchlit parades in Chicago, New York, and others. Reported membership figures range widely, hundreds of thousands by election day is common in contemporary accounts. Either way, the footprint was massive for a 6-month build. The point wasn't just crowd size, it was cadence, repeated night parades, songs, banners, and the shock and awe look made Republican politics feel inevitable and alive. They would hold these torchlit processions at night. There would be bands, fireworks, floats, Victorian street theater, calibrated to recruit and normalize the new party. They flanked lecturers and candidates, deterring disruption. And they countered the rowdy party clubs. Lincoln didn't create the group, but he did benefit immediately from its creation. The Hartford escort, after his March 1860 visit, created a template. Chicago and New York parades amplified Lincoln's visibility, and the club synced with Republican messaging like free labor, union, anti-expansion of slavery, while offering a disciplined street presence the campaign could point to, but didn't have to micromanage. The open eye symbolism, perpetual vigilance, or awake, was the focus of the symbolism, like be awake to the moral and political emergency. It was a clean glyph, and you could see it from a distance, and it was a useful meme of the time. Their oilcloth cape was not an aristocratic pageantry item, but it was industrial and practical, and it said that they were organized laborers, clerks, mechanics, just modern citizens. The night marches had a liminal power, a sort of proto-cinematic political branding. Democratic papers blasted the Wide Awakes as a corrosive, blasted them as corrosive and as insurrectionary. Street fights would happen. Southern elites read the uniforms as a northern invasion rehearsal. They were a youth militia-style club whose discipline both reduced normal barroom chaos at GOP events and, yes, created a wall of social pressure around the Republican message. The Wide Awakes opposed the expansion of slavery and rallied for the Union, but the clubs themselves were largely white and male, reflecting the constraints of the mid-19th century political culture. Some Wide Awakes folded into broader Union mobilization where Black Americans played consequential roles, but as a pre-war phenomenon, they mirror the period's exclusions, even as they helped to defeat the slave power. After the election, some of the clubs persisted as social or political outfits, but many members enlisted or migrated into wartime Union networks, entering the Civil War. As the format, the Wide Awake Toolkit, uniformed civic clubs, pageantry, youth discipline, echoed in the later campaign organizations, or fraternal orders, and union leagues. The name has periodically been revived, most notably by artist-led activism in 2020, but those are more reinterpretations and not lineal institutions. The takeaways and the reason that they worked boiled down to the use of the uniform, the repetition of the ritual, the focus on identity, and the use of the glyph, the eye, the open eye meme. They had distributed command as well, and they focused on spectacle with a purpose. What groups do you feel echo or rhyme with the Wide Awakes? Maybe there's something happening in the modern time or in the last decade or even in the last year that seems familiar to you with the Wide Awake phenomenon. Let me know. Also, before we wrap up, super quick, would love for you to like, subscribe, share, do all the YouTube stuff. I'm trying to get this to be a little bit more serious. Again, I'm a thread weaver. This is a starting point for you to just look at an overview of what the Wide Awakes are, to hopefully encourage you to go look into it, and maybe even come back here and tell me what you learned about them or what you find interesting about them. So hopefully this is something you haven't heard of before, or something that has piqued your interest, and a like or a subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, and have a great day.